Hey, paper lovers. It is Bess here with my Chicago recap. Now, this is a little delayed because the holidays were crazy, but I did want to come on and give you kind of my review of Chicago Planner Conference. And I thought I could either do it facing forward and you could just stare at my face, or I could do it while I do some memory keeping in the background. So that is what you're going to see is this is me doing some memory keeping using photos and stickers and a bunch of other stuff that I got at the conference. Let's get into it. To start, this is my experience as a shop owner who taught 2 workshops and vended the entire weekend. So my experience is going to be quite a bit different than any of the other general attendees. It's also going to be different than someone who only vended or someone who only did workshops, okay? Everyone has a little bit of a different experience, and I think it's important to note that so that if you are comparing what your experience is going to be, you don't think that you're going to be quite as busy as I was. So let's get into it. So the conference overview in Chicago, obviously it's called Chicago Planner Conference. It is a 3-day affair. We get in on Friday night. We are there all day Saturday, and then there is some additional stuff on Sunday, and then everyone goes home. Now, as I said, I was one of the vendors, and vending happens every single day, which unfortunately does mean that vendors miss some of the activities that happen simultaneously. So, Chicago Planner Conference puts on some really fun things like a book swap, and there were some make and takes, and I think there was a book signing and some paid workshops. All of those happen while vending is also happening. They weren't things that I could take part in, so if you see another Chicago review, definitely check it out because they probably have more information on how those parts went. But overall, for me, vending was a huge success, albeit a huge labor of love. I was so lucky to have 2 to 3 people at my booth at all times to help. Setup took forever. I don't know if you've ever thought about what it would take to set up like $6,000 worth of planner products, but it takes a lot of time and effort. Plus, we had to build a whole vending setup. So we had these like modular cubes to build, and we had signage to hang up. It was a lot getting even just ready for vending, let alone the actual vending itself. I cannot stress enough how stressful vending is, although it is such a wonderful experience to be able to sell your products in person. I cannot say enough about how much I love having my products in front of someone and being able to talk about them and really troubleshoot what they're going through in their daily life. I love vending, but good God, it is such a labor of love. I'm going to say that a lot. You're going to hear that a lot this weekend. As I said, I was really lucky to have some friends in my booth. My friend Margie was there to help with setup and selling, and she was a rock star getting everyone's debit cards to work because, of course, you're doing like tap to pay, and that's always a fickle thing, right? When people go to pay and then the tap to pay doesn't want to work. So she was amazing at that. I also had my friend Christina, who was running back and forth, getting us drinks, getting us snacks, making sure that everything at the booth from the outside looked really good. She was amazing to have on hand. And then my old assistant Jen was there with her son Link, who's just like the sweetest. He's definitely in my planner. You've probably already seen the baby picture. It was really great to have my friends there who were helpful. I was also making B6 planners on the fly. So people were able to build their own B6. You got to choose the guts of your planner. So I had a bunch of layouts on hand, plus add-ons like dot grid and graph pages and line pages and Polaroid tracking pages, things like that. So you could build your guts, you got to choose your cover. I then had 2 different types of coils that you could choose from. And at the end, I was also doing custom sticker sheets on the Leanne sticker maker, which you see me using. All my photos that you see here are printed on the Leanne sticker cutter that I had on site. I was so busy during vending. I barely had time to take a breath because not only are you vending, like you're selling products, but I'm also catching up with people, right? This is the first time that you get to catch up with familiar faces is this Friday night vending session. And Friday night is also a wine and shop session. So the conference actually provided everyone with a free drink ticket to turn in. And I said it's a wine and shop session, but they had like any kind of alcohol. Like I had a margarita, and it was a really good margarita. So they were making any drink you wanted at the bar, but it was one drink ticket per person. So you got to come down, have a free drink, go shop around, putz around. There were tons of amazing vendors. They had a huge vending hall this year. And it was just, it was really great time. I really love getting to catch up with people. Some of my best photos came from that Friday night. That was just a really great opening to the weekend. By the end of Friday night, we were literally so pooped. We had gone walking to the Bean that morning before we were allowed to get in for vending setup. So we had already taken like a fairly sizable walk that morning. And then we came back, did vending setup. From vending setup, we went straight into vending. And from that, we went straight to bed. No, I think we got dinner in between. Or maybe, you know what? I think we ate, I think I ate dinner on the floor on vending day one because I didn't have time to eat in between setup and actual vending. So I ate while some people manned my booth. And I ate a panini on the floor that came from the hotel lobby. So that's like one complaint. If I had to list some cons, is I would have loved some like dedicated dinner time built in on Friday. Anyway, so we went to sleep and then we got up early on Saturday because there is a short little vending session that happens before the conference opens. Unlike some conferences where you do have to line up to get like a quote unquote good seat or a seat close to the stage if that's something that you prioritize, this event does predetermined seat chart. So there is no getting a different seat. It's already assigned for you. It's on your lanyard. There's no question about where you're going. So you can have a very leisurely stroll in on Saturday morning if you were coming to the conference ballroom for the first time. There's no stress about that. Also, you can go shopping beforehand and they have a coffee station set up. I can't remember who sponsored the coffee station, but I was thankful that they had it because that meant free coffee for us while we vended for that first hour. And then we went right into the conference from there. So you are allowed into the conference room. First off, I want to do a shout out to the organizers of this event. They do such a good job at recognizing their sponsors, their vendors, their team, their volunteers, the shops that donate. They make a real concerted effort to give credit where it is due. And so in addition to getting to come into the conference room, getting to your seat, seeing your table, checking out what's on your table, right? Because that's like a big deal. You also have time, and they gave us all QR codes to scan so that you could share what was on your table. You could share photos of people at the table. Like, they did a whole bunch of effort to give good marketing towards the tables or towards the shops who donated stuff on those tables. So I really got to shout them out for that. Like, that is not a super common thing. They're the only conference I know that like takes the time to like say, hey, everyone look at who sponsored your table and thank them right now. And it's a really nice thing because table sponsorship, and I'm going to talk about tables at the end of this video, but table sponsorship is a lot. And so it is nice that they give a concerted time for thanking the shops who sponsor those tables. And then they also do just kind of like a moment to kind of like meet the people at your table. They really do a good job at really centering the fact that this is about community, right? So there is time to chat with the people at your table. It's not quite as overwhelming as some of the other events that I've been to where they're jamming like 7,000 sessions into one morning, or where you have to run to the table to get to it. Like there's none of that. Saturday is very chill. I sat at the Ferris wheel press table. It was amazing. However, it was way in the back of the room, which was good for bathroom breaks, but I really couldn't see the stage. And sometimes for me, that makes it harder for me to concentrate. If I don't have like the stage in my sight line, a lot of times I get distracted. So I was quite distracted. I also was teaching 2 sessions after this. So my brain was also like in prep mode, when you have, or like when you were in high school and you knew you had like a test after lunch, but you still have to go through the first half of your morning and like make it through and soak in that information from those classes before lunch. That was me, right? Trying to soak in the information from classes before lunch, knowing that I had a test after lunch. Except it wasn't a test. I was teaching 2 workshops and they were amazing. We'll talk about that in a second. So I was a little distracted in the conference room on Saturday morning. I have to be so for real about that because I had to look up today who the speakers were on Saturday because I could not remember. I did take notes, so they are in my memory keeper. Like I have quotes from both of the speakers. It was Shay Burkett and Charles Clark. Shay is the founder of Planned and Proper. They are a planner company. So this was a little outside of my wheelhouse. Like I also run a planner company, so not to say that there's nothing I can learn from a fellow shop owner, but it's limited what I'm going to get from them. So I wasn't super tuned into her workshop. And then Charles Clark was pretty captivating. Like I definitely wrote down quite a few quotes from him, but I couldn't tell you really much of what he spoke about because like I said, I was prepping for my test after lunch. My test after lunch, let's talk about it. I did have lunch, by the way. We had a quick lunch break. My old assistant, Jen, was really smart and she pre-ordered us some Lou Malnati's to be delivered to the hotel. So there was, I think, an hour and a half between the morning sessions and the afternoon workshops. Now, the workshops, by the way, are really, this is one of the really cool features of Chicago Planner Conference is I have no idea how many there actually were, but like, let's say 30 or so workshops, and they're all small class workshops. And you get to, before the event even happens, you're sent a survey where they tell you about the 30 different workshops, and you get to rank the top 10 that you want to be in. And then they try and align you as best as possible using some sort of algorithm. I don't know how they figure that out. It's really quite magical. So people got to opt into workshops, although you don't always get your top picks. You know what I mean? Like if everyone chooses the same top pick, then obviously everyone's not going to get into that class. Like most of the classes were capped somewhere between 50 and 100 attendees. I don't know if there were any 100 attendee classes. It probably was about 50 per class. So they're real small form classes, which is nice, especially as an instructor, because you can really get hands-on, walk around the room, talk to people, really troubleshoot if there are troubleshooting things that need to happen during your workshop. It's just really nice to teach a workshop of that size. I have taught workshops on huge stages for over 1,000 people, and I have taught workshops in my own shop for two people. And I can tell you a classroom size of 30 to 40 people is really great because you have enough of a pool of people that kind of know what they're doing that it really encourages the people who don't know what they're doing to at least try. I know when nobody knows what they're doing, it can be a little intimidating to try, but because these workshops are so small, most people do participate. I know, like if you go to a conference, a lot of times when workshops and like live things are happening, a lot of times you'll see people not participating. They're like, I'm saving it for when I get home. That's not the case at these CPC small workshops. With the exception of a very few people, most people are doing the workshop live, which is really nice. Because I was teaching workshops, I didn't get to take any workshops, but I had 2 workshops back to back. So for the first one, I was doing my washi workshop, which is one of the things that I have taught on my Patreon. I've done it in store, and I was really excited to bring it to Chicago because I had just launched a collab product with JoJo from JoJo's Pretty Paper Shop, and she was going to be in Chicago. So I knew that I could use the collab product during this workshop, and she would also be there to enjoy in this moment of getting to see our products come to life. Because I gotta tell you, there is nothing more magical than seeing your products in use. I literally, it gives me goosebumps in a non-cringy way. Like, it's just such a magical moment seeing people using and enjoying your products, something that you put a lot of love and thought and sweat and tears into. So I really was excited that JoJo and I were going to be able to share this moment together. And I also had the benefit of our dear friend Mackenzie had early access to the files for JoJo's collab. So let me backpedal. JoJo and I collaborated on a product. Go check it out on my website. It's the Crafty Interiors Washi Workbook, and JoJo did all of the illustrations for this book. She is such a talented illustrator, and so I tasked her with coming up with all these fun, crafty interior scenes, and they're just such a blast to play with washi in. So Mackenzie had early access to this. Being a friend of JoJo and I does have some perks, and so she had early access, and she did a whole bunch of samples in this workbook that I was able to show off at this workshop and also at my vending booth. So I had these really great samples to share with the class. JoJo was there by my side, and it was just really awesome. I showed the various ways that I use washi. We did it kind of in a 3-step process, which is how I like to do my washi workshops. And the first step is kind of just working with a pattern that is already set up for the washi sizes. So 15 millimeter, like your most basic size. And by the way, JoJo donated washi, and I also had washi from Lauren Phelps. So the tables were loaded with washi that they got to play with. Plus they had just gotten a whole bunch of washi as swag in the workshops or in the conference main stage event earlier. I'm pretty sure Live Love Posh had given everyone a washi roll. So had, I think, Lauren Phelps at that point. So like we had additional washi rolls in addition to what I provided on the table. So everyone had this pool of washi they got to play with, and we worked on patterns first. Then we leveled up to more intricate patterns, and then we finally attacked like organic shapes like crafty interiors. And it was just really cool to get to walk around the room to see like all ages coming together and enjoying a craft that you also love, and being able to share the knowledge that I have gained from years of crafting. You know, some people are coming to the table having never played with washi. So I love that there are all skill levels at these events, and we had such a good time. That was my first session. And then my second workshop was all on finding planner peace by breaking down the pieces of your life and building a product from the ground up based on all of your preferences. I was actually a lot more nervous to teach this one because it was a little more low energy, more informative, but it ended up being a really good workshop. I was able to troubleshoot some planner problems with people IRL. So, you know, like in my shop, if you walk into my store and you're like, hey, these are all my planner problems, I can solve them. If you got a problem, I'll solve it. Like every time. But I can't always do that with people online. So it was really cool to be able to do it in this workshop, in person, work through this kind of quick Q&A to kind of get them on the right track, and then troubleshoot from there. It was so good. So both of my sessions went really, really well. And I was really glad that I got to teach both of those. Although I do wish I had taken some of the sessions because some of the other sessions seemed amazing. Like there was a fountain pen session. I would have loved to have been in that one. There was some really cool stuff that happened while I was also teaching. So you can actually see in this photo on screen here, that's one of the ladies who's taken my workshop on Patreon. She brought her workbook to show me it filled in. All that to say, I think the workshop sessions that Chicago coordinates are really cool and really unique to them. And I really loved taking them last year because I took sessions last year, and also leading them this year was really phenomenal. So that was really awesome. Of course, after that, guess what we did? You know it, more vending. There was more vending time. I was so burnt out on vending at that point, but I was still having a good time, and I knew we had the rodeo later that night. So the rodeo is kind of like a dance party / planner party / get together and have dinner. There's lots of good foods, like a bunch of like Chicago themed things. So there were like Chicago hot dogs, and I don't even know what else. I can't really remember. I was snacking all night. I also somehow ended up with, as people were like leaving the event, if they hadn't had their drink, for some reason they were handing me their drink tickets. So somehow I ended up with a bunch of drink tickets. So I really didn't have to buy drinks all night, and everyone got one drink ticket like when you came in, but not everyone drinks, right? So some people were just giving them away. And like I said, I ended up with way too many drink tickets. When I got there, I was rocking my Cowboy Carter hat. So obviously when I went to Beyonce's concert earlier this year, the Cowboy Carter tour, I had to have a bedazzled rhinestone hat. And since I am recently divorced and I got my maiden name back, I actually imprinted that on the inside of my hat. So it said Cowboy Couture, which is my last name. And so I rocked that and I had this like cute little dress, but it was kind of like a low key outfit. But then I walked in and I instantly saw one of my planner friends, and she had on the most phenomenal tinsel shoulder piece. So like imagine two really broad like shoulder pads that are decked out with foil tinsel that hangs down like an ultimate fringe. So they were like a fringe shoulder piece, but they were sparkly. They were so much fun. So I saw her rocking it and I said, "Hey, amazing shoulder pads." And she said, "I have an extra set if you want one." Girl, yes. Girl, yes, I do. Of course I do. Of course I do. So I also ended up having that amazing foiled shoulder pad all night, and it was the ultimate dance accessory. If you know anything about me, you know I love a shoulder shimmy shake. And so I was able to shake those shoulders all night long and have that foil going. When I did twirls, it was spinning around me. It was just so fun. It was great on that dance floor. I danced the night away. I had way too many drinks. And then, of course, we somehow ended up at the hotel bar for last call. I don't, that was probably unnecessary, but you know, I finally made it up to my room. My roomie was leaving the next morning early, so she was packing. Well, I got ready for bed, and then when I woke up the next morning, she was gone. And so that was really sad, and I had to go down to Vending alone. But Christina was down there, and as I said, she was amazing all weekend long. So she helped me with Vending that morning. Then there were two more main stage sessions. First, we had the founder of Coco Daisy, and then we had Faith Cade, which was an affirmations coach and author. The founder of Coco Daisy was awesome. She gave everyone these really great craft bags that say, "Stationery doesn't ask questions. Stationery understands." And the flip side says, "Warning, contents may cause creativity." So really cute bag. It also had some Coco Daisy swag in it, of course. Unfortunately, the checkout at the hotel is at 11 a.m., which is while the sessions are happening and also like while Vending is happening. So while Coco Daisy was speaking, I ran back up to my room to pack up my room because my room was not packed. I missed probably 2/3 of her session, but I did catch the last part where the swag was dropped, so that was fun. And then I got to see Faith, who was really great, and she taught affirmations. She walked us through writing affirmations. She had her books there. She had, I think, a 90-day affirmation book that people could pick up, but she was really great. And she talked about, you know, the best way of writing affirmations. And I took some of that into my Patreon later at the beginning of this year. We just did a Patreon affirmation workshop. So I definitely used some of what I learned at CPC in my future Patreon workshop. So that's always a plus when you can pick up something new from somebody at a conference. And I had never heard of her before, so I love when someone that I don't know of is really bringing it. After those two sessions, we had one last power hour of shopping, and then it was teardown. And gosh, I was the last person tearing down last year, and I was the last person tearing down this year. It takes, I can't even describe it. It takes so much time to get loose inserts back into the bags that you ripped open when you first were setting up. It just does. It takes a really long time. And if you're not careful about it, you bend all your pages. And I really wanted those pages to get back shipped without being bent or torn. And so that does mean taking time to really pack it slow and methodically, which means I was there until the bitter end packing. I think there was one person left, but she lived in Chicago. And so she was waiting for her ride to get there before she was going to start packing up. So like I was it. They were waiting on me, but got it torn down. Thankfully, the Hilton Chicago, that's where CPC does their event at. This is the second time they've had it there. They have a FedEx on site. So even though it's a little bit expensive, it is very convenient to just be able to drag the boxes over to the FedEx window. That was the event in its totality. So let's talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. No, there's nothing ugly. The good is always the people. I love, love, love. You can see it in my memory keeper. The best part for me is always the people. I love getting to hang out with fellow shop owners in person because there's a lot that you can say in person that you wouldn't dare say over the phone, but you want to talk about and you want to kind of vent about. And so it's really nice to be able to have FaceTime with people that you love and care about but live across the country, right? And again, I just want to shout out how very organized the admin team is of the Chicago Blender Conference. They really do a good job. The volunteers know what they're doing. They know where to be. They actually are helpful if you have a question. It's so nice. That's no shade to other events, but it's very often at big events, and this is like outside of the planner community too. I mean this like I've gone to cons for many things. Like a lot of times volunteers are volunteers, and they often are very knowledgeable in one area, the area that they were told to man, but they don't know anything about any of the other areas. It's a very common volunteer experience. I don't know if you've ever experienced that at an event, right? But CPC volunteers are really well trained. I think they have training a couple weeks before the event, and then like lead up, and then you would hear them being pep talked like before the doors were open. It was just really good, and just everyone was so willing to help. And then I also just want to say Chicago itself, to me, is the best place for a conference. There are local stationery shops that are walkable. You can also take a taxi really quick or an Uber really quick, but they're walkable. Chicago itself is very walking friendly. There are lots of parks. There's lots of free things to do in Chicago. The food is amazing. Like I love Chicago. When I used to work in marketing, when I had my full-time job, we often did conferences in Chicago for food related events, and I always was so excited to go there. So for me, Chicago itself is a huge perk of this event. The downside really is if you are a shop owner that is vending, it is a nonstop affair. I honestly, like for the people that helped at my booth, I felt bad that they had bought tickets to the event because I was like, oh my God, you didn't even really get to enjoy the event. You were at my booth so much. And I mean, like nobody complained to me about it, but I just know like I am getting the financial benefit of vending. The people that help at my booth, they're just helping because they like to help, because they're awesome people. And so like I really was like, oh God, you didn't get to enjoy the event. But they're like, no, we got to enjoy it just in a different way, which is also true. So if you are a shop owner that is thinking about doing an event like Chicago, just know that it is a grind. You definitely need to have someone on site with caffeine and water. And maybe bread. If you are near JoJo's vending station, which I was, she almost always has some sort of baked good. So that's a plus. And there were water stations and coffee stations nearby at all times. So that was also a plus. I honestly, I'm really excited for the future where I get to attend one of these just as an attendee. I think it would be really cool to just go to a conference and not do the whole shop owner thing. But I always really enjoy myself. I love getting to hang out with my community and to catch up with people IRL. Now, I did say I was going to talk about tables at the end, and I do just want to briefly touch upon tables because there was a bit of table drama. Drama, Bess. Drama. Listen, this is what I'm going to tell you about tables. This is a shop owner perspective of tables. I have been going to conferences for 10 years now, and I have been doing them as a shop owner for 8 years now. Okay, my first couple experiences were just as a general attendee, and more recently, obviously, I've been doing it as a shop owner. And my first couple experiences as a shop owner, I was all in on tables because I was like, this is your moment to shine. It was the peak of hyper consumerism in the community. You remember how it used to get at other events. I'm just going to say it was a very extravagant moment in time. And it was a very expensive venture as a shop owner because you're investing anywhere from $50 minimum to, let's say, $300 maximum per seat at a table. If it is a 10-seat table, that is what? $3,000. And there is no actual return on any of that. Like, there's no guarantee that anyone's going to share your stuff on Instagram. There's no guarantee that anyone's going to shop at your shop because they sat at your table. Like, it is just a marketing opportunity that like really has a low return rate, other than the goodwill that you get from the community for having a quote unquote awesome table. Okay. I could do a whole video on tables, and I just might. But what I want to say is we are in a very different time and space from when I first started doing tables. And as you guys know, my physical shop is closing this year, and I will be switching to digitals only at some point. So I am winding down. And so my ability to participate is even dwindling a little bit. And so this year I had signed up for one table, and the minimum per seat is $50. And I chose a product collection from my shop that valued at exactly $50, because to me, in the middle of an economic downturn, that seemed like an acceptable amount of product. It's still a fair amount of product. Like, that's like more than, I think there were like 7 different items. And I chose a good variety. Like, there was some blackout, there was some white paper. I included some notepads so that if you weren't in a planner, you could still at least enjoy a notepad. And unfortunately, there's a group on Facebook that is just for planner drama. I'm not in there, but I got lots of screenshots from people who are in there of people just dragging me for not doing more on my table, for not putting pens to go with the blackout paper, and not including coloring pencils to go with the coloring book. And those opinions are fine. You can have those opinions, but all those choices were made intentionally. Like, I know personally, I have coloring pencils that I love that are expensive. I don't need a chintzy package of coloring pencils that someone bought on Amazon for, as low as they could get it, because it's very expensive to sponsor a table. I also made sure that everything on my table was handmade by me. I didn't include any products from Amazon or Walmart, or in the past I've done snacks, and those are usually sourced from big box shops, and I just didn't want to do that. Everything on my table was produced by me, which means I don't produce pens. There were no pens on my table. I also will tell you I had a couple extra things that I had planned to do for my table that I ran out of time on. And so I made sure that there was exactly $50 worth of product, and that rubbed some people the wrong way. I don't feel bad about it. I met the minimum. I'm not going to lose sleep over it. People can have opinions. That's A-okay. But what I will say is when people air those opinions out, it definitely does detract other shops from wanting to participate, because there was already a sentiment, and has always existed in the planner community, that if you do a table, it's not going to be good enough. People aren't going to want to sit at your table. It's kind of like being picked last for gym class, right? Like, it's kind of, table sponsorship can feel that way a little bit if people don't like what you put on your table. And there was actually I want to say it was during Faith's workshop, she talked about a shop owner who specifically told her she had this fear that people weren't going to like what she put at her table. And Faith kind of pumped her up and was like, anything you put at your table is going to be amazing. And then of course she saw the table and was like, your table was amazing. It was just interesting to me that like that was literally brought up at the conference, and then someone didn't feel like I put enough on the table. So could I have put more on the table? Of course I could have. But I met the minimum, and I honestly don't have extra to spend right now. And I certainly am not going to spend it at Amazon getting colored pencils for people. Pretty sure everyone has colored pencils or crayons or watercolor or washi at home that they could use in those books. So I'm not concerned that people don't have writing instruments for them. Anyways, that was like the one little bad spot on my whole event. But is it going to stop me from doing things in the future? Absolutely not. I love Chicago Planner Conference. I don't know if I'll be attending next year as a shop or as an attendee, but I'm certainly going to make a point to be there regardless. So I just wanted to kind of give you the full breadth of my experience. And I do think I would like to do a deep dive on tables as they have evolved over the years, because I think there's been quite an evolution. We could definitely turn that into a back in my day. Okay, well, this has been long enough. I've been rambling on and on. You can see I made some really cute planner pages in my planner. My memory keeper is almost done, and I will be sure to give you a full flip through when it is. All right, friends, stay light, stay bright. I will catch you later.